Do we overcomplicate money in our minds if we've been taught stories as kids or been taught beliefs about it? And how do we get over the overcomplication of making seven figures as entrepreneurs?
I agree with you that I think it gets overcomplicated. And so we just have to boil it down to the first principles of the math. Like what math is required to make $1 million, right? Like we can either sell, $100, $10,000 things. We can sell $1,000 things. We can sell, and when I say things, you don't have to price your product at $1,000. Your just lifetime value of a customer has to be $1,000, right? So just how much somebody's going to spend with you over the period of time that they buy from you in general, right? Now, if you sell physical products, that might just be the lifetime value. But if you sell services like the dog guy, he probably has people who stay with him for years, and so he has to add up that total lifetime value as the number. And it's like, well, how many of those do I need to sell? And then you just divide it by, to back into it. And so once you know the math, right? So the first is like, what is the math to get to the million? And you have to figure out how many units you're going to sell. So let's just use something that's, let's use $1,000 because it's an easy one. Okay,
so 1,000 sales of $1,000.
Exactly. So we have to do 1,000 sales. Now, how are we going to break that down on an annual basis? Because 1,000 sounds like a huge number. Well, it's about 3 a day, right? Like, okay, well, 3 a day is all of a sudden a lot more manageable. Yeah. And we're like, okay, well, what creates a sale? So at some point, to get set, I'm going to take one step before for 6 figures for anybody who's not there. It's like you have to sell, and this is again for business owners, entrepreneurs. If you have a job, then awesome. But like if you're trying to make money, you have to sell something to someone. That's it. That's all you have to do to get to 6 figures to do that. So that's one avatar, one medium, one channel, right? One product, one channel. That's all that is. You add the fourth piece, which is consistency. Right, that's what goes from 6 to 7.
That's hard for people.
And the consistent, 100%, because then you can tackle all the emotional or whatever it is that why you're not being consistent. But from a math perspective, we just have to break down what are the primary actions that result in the output, right? And so if 3 sales means that I sell 1 out of 3 people who want to walk, or 1 out of 2 people who come for the dog walking. Okay, well then I need 6 appointments a day. Okay, how do I get 6 appointments a day? It's like, well, I have 6 ways that I can get appointments, right? I can get appointments from referrals. I get appointments from affiliates. So I make a deal with the local grooming place for dogs, or the local vet for dogs, or
put my flyers up or something,
or the urgent care for dogs, or Petco, like whatever. I mean, there's a million ways, right? Like I get one of those guys, I figure out how to deal with them, and I say, I'll give you the first 2 months of what they pay me to you if you just send them to me.
Yes.
More money for them, and it probably helps their customers because it's a need that they can't solve, but they have the same avatar. Cool. So you got referrals, you got affiliates. You've got, you could just reach out to people you know, just one-on-one, like, hey, I've got my thing. Do you need help with your dog? You could reach out to people you don't know, which you can do through Post-it notes, cold calls, emails, door knocking, flyers. Yeah, all of those things are ways that you can reach out to people you don't know one-on-one. You can make content about how dog walking is amazing and ways to walk your dog better, ways to take care of a dog. And the whole point of that is to get people to feel comfortable with you specifically in your brand, that you will do a better job taking care of their dog than they will. Exactly, right? You want people to feel guilty that they're not doing all this stuff for their dog. And then they would start, then you feel inbound, right? And then finally you have ads, right? You run paid ads to get new appointments booked, right? And so those are the 6 primary things you can do to get customers, right? And so it's like, okay, I need 6 appointments a day. I have those 6 different ways that I can get them. Which of them do I feel most comfortable with? Because you can win at all of them, right? And it could be soliciting your customers for the referrals. It could be getting the affiliates relationships set up. It could be the one-on-one DMs. It could be the ads. It could be the content. Any of those 6 would work, right? And so we just have to pick which one you want. And so then you just reverse engineer those actions because even one step after. Obviously, this is something I do a lot. So if you reverse engineer the affiliate thing, right? So how do you get affiliates? It's like, well, I need to reach out to 100 people a day. So you'd still use one of the other methods, so cold outbound, warm outbound, content DMs, or ads, right? To get those affiliates. And say, okay, well, if I reach out to 100 affiliates a day that are in my local region to see if they will partner with me and I can create some sort of relationship, if I do that every day, maybe I'll get 2 of those referral partners a week. And if each of those referral partners a week can get me 10 appointments, then for me to get my 6 appointments a day, it's 180 appointments per month. If I need 18 affiliates.
Right.
So all I got to do is get 18 affiliates. But then if you're thinking right now, you're like, well, wait, but I would be able to get 18 affiliates in probably like a month or 2. And the answer is you're right. But people just don't think through the math of how to do it. Because if we're being real, there's no reason you should cap your business at $1 million. Right? And so to the same degree, when we ask the question like, how do I make $1 million business? You also think in increments that somebody who's trying to make $1 million thinks in, right? Because I got asked on this TikTok. So they gave me this prompt. They said, "Hey, Alex, how would you make 6 figures a year?" That was the question. And my immediate response was, I would sell something for 100 grand and then figure out what I would do for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And so it's like these people think about money differently. You know what I mean? And so if you think about how do I build this thing into like 100 million, and you have to think of a number that's as high as you can fathom, right? If you can't fathom 100 million, then don't think that. But like as high as you can mathematically fathom. So it might be $10 million. Okay. Think like how many dogs would I need to walk? And you just reverse the math into what you need. Right, and
how
then
many people I need to hire, and how many? Yeah.
Exactly, and then you start with the inputs, because in the beginning, the only inputs you have is going to be the content, it's going to be running the ads, it's going to be doing the warm, it's going to be do the reach outs. That's it. Those are the inputs, and then everything else is going to stem from that. And then what will happen is if you have the advertising machine on the front end to bring people in, the bottleneck becomes your leading, rather than the selling and the product.
You're leading, yes.
Right? And so then the focus then becomes, how do I use that same? If you really want to get deep on this, how do I use that same skill set of advertising and then shift it to my internal? Because I still have to do warm reach outs, I still have to run ads, I still have to make content, I still can have affiliates or get referrals from my employees to get more team. And so every business has 2 funnels. You have the front end funnel that gets you customers and the back end funnel that gets you team. And so as you crank this guy, you need to crank this one. And then that's how you can scale these things to the moon without stopping.
Right. Is it harder to get leads and sales or harder to build a powerful team with the right culture?
I think they're both hard and both easy for different people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Layla naturally is very good at the back end funnel. I mean, she's so good at building culture, but she has this thing that she's kind of spoken over me from a belief standpoint, which is if you are a really good marketer, a really good salesman, a lot of them are like, oh, I'm not a good leader, I'm not a good operator, I'm not a good whatever. And she's like, if you can sell all those people and influence all those people, you can use that same skill set and just face internally to your team. It was a nice belief shift for me, or belief breaker for me. I was like, she's totally right. And so to the point that you were making earlier, like leading is selling and influencing, a lot of it really comes down to being able to move people and being able to clearly communicate what you want.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to overcome their limiting beliefs around money in general?
A lot of people were told things about the world that were not true and they take them as fact. And so they're making their decision calculus off of something that is not true. And so they're making conclusions off of false data. And that's why they can't see it, because what they're basing their assumptions on is false. Right?
But they've been believing it for so long.
Yeah.
So how do they change that belief when it's been baked in their psyche for decades?
Yeah. I think that the way that the biggest beliefs have been broken for me have been one of 2 ways. Reality proves me wrong, or someone tells me a story and gives me evidence from their lives. Like I remember when we went to a mastermind and we were just starting out. I was not making a ton of money. And a guy got up there and he gave his little spiel and he was like, yeah, we're making $300,000 or $400,000 a month. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not really sure I like the business, blah, blah, blah. And the guy did not seem smart.
And you were like, how is he doing this?
And it's funny you say that, because my actual first thought was, if he can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And so that was like, he, through evidence, like he reshaped my reality. It was one of the most momentous things. I remember Layla and I both had the same takeaway because she was next to me. When we both saw this guy do this, like we walked out and we're like, dude, if he can, like we both immediately had the same conclusion, like if he can do it, we can do it. And so I think that that's like, how do you either have reality prove you wrong, or someone else is that reality for you, where they tell their story about, hey, I used to feel the same way, I used to think this thing, and then I will share my story so you don't have to have the scar.
Yes.
So you don't have to give up 5 years of your life to learn this lesson. I'll just give you the story so you don't have to have the scar.
There's certain things I think we need to learn on our own and fail and, and make mistakes on our own, but there's a lot of things we can learn from other people. Being the youngest of 4 kids, I watched, my older siblings fail and succeed in their own ways as a model and say, okay, I don't want to make this same mistake. Yeah. I made other stupid mistakes, but I didn't make certain mistakes that they had made. And able to accelerate that time from the pain that I was going to feel by making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
I think you're going to make mistakes no matter what, but I think that's seeing other people and learning. This is why it's so important to have coaches, mentors, people that can break the beliefs in you and tell you what you need to do.
If you think about the human race, just to zoom out, because I think it's a really interesting concept. I was talking to Caleb about Gary, and I'm a competitive person.
Yes.
I like, thinking like, oh, by the time I'm that age, I'm going to be further. You know what I mean? Like, and it's lovingly, right? And he said this thing back to me that like, it hit me, right? And he was like, dude, Gary didn't have Gary.
Right. He just had to do it on his own.
Right. And all of these, and so the thing is like a lot of us, and myself included, I get caught up in the like, man, these kids have it so easy, blah, 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 right? YouTube wasn't even around when like all this stuff, right? Yeah. But the thing is, if you ask most entrepreneurs what they want to do with their lives, they say they want to make an impact on the world. They want to make the world a better place. But like making the world a better place, what that looks like is it being easier for the next generation. And so rather than lamenting the fact that the guys who are younger have it easier, that was the point.
Yes.
That was the mission accomplished. And so it reframed how I thought about being the greatest of all time, because I think a lot of people have that goal to be the greatest. I mean, a lot of people have that goal. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I can't have that goal, because if I did my job, then I have to have made people who are after me get there faster than I got there. And so the mark of the success is that I'm not the greatest of all time, but that other people who come after me are even better. And so it really shifted my relationship with how I saw future generations, or sorry, past generations, the guys who are older than me, who are killing it. And I used to think, oh, I'm gonna beat them. And if I look at how much I'm worth at this age versus them, like I just doing the math, I should be further along than them by the time I'm their age. And it was this kind of like different competition rather than this gratitude for like, well, of course I'm gonna be bigger than they are at their age. I had them to help me. They didn't have them to help them. And so I'll age up and we'll be multi-billionaire, whatever it is, right? And then there's gonna be a young whippersnapper who had me to help,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Who had me to help him out, because I'm seeing, we have guys who apply for acquisition.com who are in their 20s to 100 million a year, right? And I'm like, and that wasn't possible 50 years ago. It just wasn't, right? And so if we think about like the human race in general on a macro perspective, right? You have like, rather than seeing the people who are older than you as the old dogs that you have to kick off, right? And by all means, play hard in the paint, don't get me wrong. And the people, the young whippersnappers behind you, as resenting them for the fact that they got it easier. It just flipped the script for me in terms of like, I'm so grateful for these guys who came before me because they didn't have them.
Right.
And then if these guys do eventually beat me, right, or they're further along than I was at their age, rather than lamenting them to protect my ego, because what it really says is you're better than I am. Because if they're making more money at a younger age than me, then it means they're better at business in some way than I was at that age. That's just the fact of business, right? They're better than me at that age. And to protect my ego, I want to say they had it easier, right? But
what does that do for you if you protect your ego as opposed to help others accelerate faster than you?
I think it just reframes it. And so it takes the ego away from, I need to crush these guys, or I need to poke at why it's easier for them, and instead say like, it being easier for them is my purpose. How can I say that my mission is to document and share the best practices of building world-class companies, and then not be pumped for someone to use the best practice of building world-class companies 10 years before I learned them to accelerate way past? And so, anyways, that was a frame of reference that completely shifted the narrative for me in terms of competition. I still am pushing as hard as I possibly can to transform my potential into reality. But it feels different. It feels lighter, cool. And I like it. So anyways, I just want to share because it was a cool breakthrough that I had recently. There's a zillion people who are like, you suck, none of this is true, whatever. And for me, it rolls off my back because I have evidence.
Right.
And I'm like, no, it is true, and here's how. But if I didn't have that, I would probably have to, it's because I don't know what the right call is there. Because if I didn't have the evidence, it would be hard for me to say, you're wrong.